It's autumn here in the northern hemisphere. There's of course in Reykjavik and Iceland as well. So what better time to take you on a little autumn stroll through downtown Reykjavik and maybe have or use the opportunity to have a slight discussion about, well, what autumn and the approaching winter means for tourists and visitors, and as well how the change of seasons changes or affects the mood of us Icelanders and our culture. I don't think there's a more appropriate place to start a downtown walk than by Tjörnin, the pond in downtown Reykjavik, which you can see here behind me with City Hall there in the background. Now, I did a wintry walk in dreadful wintry conditions a few years back through the downtown area, the further downtown downish on this side of the pond. A link to that up here. So now I'm going to take a slightly different route rather than walk around that part, the flat part of downtown. I'm going to pass over there to the other side of the pond, walk up Skólavörðustígur, which I think people are usually referring to, or tourists are referring to as the Rainbow Road, up to the top of the hill where Hallgrímskirkja, the large church, stands, and then maybe walk back down Laugaveg, the old main shopping street. So take a slightly different route. This small park on the southern edge of Tjörnin, the pond, towards the municipal airport, is called Hljómskálagarður, named for this building, Hljómskálin. I guess you can call this a pavilion or something and call this the Pavilion Park, Hljómskálagarðurinn. So as we pass Tjörnin, just a friendly reminder, don't go into Tjörnin, the pond. You can wade through it, you're not going to sink deeper than, well, I guess mid-thigh or something where it's deepest, but the lowest third of that is going to be just a layer of bird droppings and pretty much nothing else. So a deep silt bottom of disposed foodstuff. Those over there are Listasafn Reykjavíkur, the Reykjavik Art Gallery, and Fríkirkjan, a church here downtown. Both buildings that are kind of stable foundations in the local art scene, because the church hosts or tends to host a lot of different musical, or serves as a venue for all kinds of musical events throughout the year. All kinds of concerts taking place in this small, old, but very acoustic, I presume, church. Now I'm gonna jump up and cross the street. This is Lagata. It's actually, which means Creek Street. It's basically that because there is a creek running underneath the street, feeding the pond, or emptying the pond into the ocean. And originally the street was built on top of and over that and covering the now underground creek at Lagata. Since we are in Lagata, I feel I have to mention, if any of you, like me, are using drones or other DJI equipment, so this is actually a DJI Pocket 3 camera that we're filming on right now. The local DJI store, the official DJI store, is here in Lagata. Usually quite well stocked, very good service and all these things. So if you need your DJI stuff while in Reykjavik, I definitely recommend that. I'm in no way affiliated with that store. This is one of those places where I consistently get the stuff I need, good prices and good service, and I feel it warrants calling out those places and praising them. And I mean, since I am in that mood, if you like or need other camera gear while over here, my other favorite store is Reykjavik Photo, which is not in this area, but on the kind of eastern side of downtown. Same thing applies there. I'm not affiliated, and same thing applies as well, that I always find the things that I need, decent prices and very good consistent service. Also recommend that place. This thing here used to be the #1 public toilets in downtown Reykjavik, and they today host the Punk Museum of Iceland. An interesting place to stop by, and definitely or peek in if you're interested in punk rock. Autumn, September, October, is a relatively brief and turbulent affair in Iceland. It's now the middle of October. It's about 10 degrees Celsius. There's no wind and it hasn't rained in the afternoon. It did rain this morning. And this is a rare occurrence. So expect autumn here to be torrents of rainstorms, one after another. So the opportunities to see beautiful foliage, while that foliage exists, it quickly gets blown away by the first storm of autumn. This short stub of a street here is called Bankastræti, or Bank Street, and it's actually that small piece which connects Lagata down at the bottom up to the intersection of Laugavegur and Skólavörðustígur, slightly further up. Probably one of the shorter, busier streets in town. So this is the intersection. We're going right up Skólavörðustígur, which the tourists have come to call Rainbow Street, or Rainbow Road. There's a tour guide over there saying the exact same thing. So Skólavörðustígur, this one, traditionally is more boutique shops, small art galleries, those kind of things, while Laugavegur used to be the main shopping street back in the day. It probably now has been mainly replaced by the shopping malls, but still hosts a number of shops, cafes, restaurants, etc., etc. Cafe Mokka, one of the oldest cafes or older cafes in Iceland, has been there since the late 50s, serving coffee and kind of providing both a haunt as well as a exhibition place or venue for bustling artists. Did I say bustling artists? I meant struggling artists. One of the things that lends downtown Reykjavik its vibrancy, and it's what I see when I look around, it's basically that 95% of the people around are tourists. There are practically no natives here, only tourists, and well, the majority even of the people working in hospitality, especially downtown, are immigrants from one location or another. So I think I really enjoy that. I think this is one of the things that can, again, lends vibrancy to the city. It makes it alive, but it also means that kind of the native sounds of downtown Reykjavik are English and rolling luggage. So Skólavörðustræti ends at the top of Skólavörðuholt, the hill, in front of Hallgrímskirkja, the church of Hallgrímur, which used to for a very long time be the tallest building in Iceland, about 74 meters high if I remember correctly, named for Hallgrímur Pétursson, an Icelandic priest and poet who lived in the 17th century. It was actually built, well, in large part on public donations, but with some official funding as well, and it was only finally finished in its kind of Nordic Gothic style in the 80s. Was opened in its final form, but it's, well, since then obviously become a landmark of Reykjavik, probably the most iconic building in the city. So here we are at the top of the hill with Hallgrímskirkja to my left currently, and the statue of Leifur Eiríksson, the first Nordic man to discover North America, according to our history. You can't miss this place, so I'm not going to go into any details. Everybody goes here. What I want to do is point your attention to Listasafn Einars Jónssonar, or Einars Jónsson's museum, which is to the south of the church. Einar Jónsson was a sculptor here in Iceland. The museum itself is fantastic, but no less so is the publicly open garden around the museum, which we're going to have a slight peek into. This sculpture garden with free admission is one of my favorite hidden little gems in downtown Reykjavik. I love those sculptures depicting sceneries from religion and Nordic mythology and all kinds of things. It's just one of those little beautiful sanctuary, tiny gardens, parks within the smack center of the city, which a lot of people overlook, and I was already an adult when I discovered this place myself. All right, gonna leave it at that. Let's exit the sculpture garden of Einar Jónsson's museum. Definitely recommend you stop by here if you're in town. Beautiful sculptures, free admission, all these things. Generally speaking, if you see something popping up in the video in the background as we're walking, and you have any kind of curiosity about what those places are, or want some more information, feel free to drop a question with a timestamp into the comments below, and I'll do my best to give some insights. But this being said, let's now head back, past Hallgrímskirkja, the church, and walk down onto Laugaveg, the shopping street, and down there move back into downtown, closer to the pond. Even though we're not entering the church today, it's you can go in and up. You have to pay, I think, a modest admission, and you can go to the upstairs gallery and view the city 360 degrees. Throughout the, somewhat obstructed, but at least through those windows above the clock. Otherwise, I almost ran into someone. So keep in mind, there are two safety things to consider in downtown Reykjavik. There's going to be a lot of tourists gawking at the sights around them, not paying attention to their surroundings, and people carrying cameras like myself, trying to video blog something downtown, trying their best not to walk into other pedestrians, with limited success. So while we walk up to the start of the commercial part of Laugaveg, I did mention something about, some travel advisory. I just want to bring people's attention to that. There's a lot of tourists coming here in autumn, throughout the winter, basically all year round. But there's also a lot of people asking about their plans to, if a plan or an itinerary makes sense, driving into the countryside, even driving the ring road in the middle of winter. There are a couple of things to keep in mind. If you plan on doing so, be very used to winter conditions and be willing to be flexible, because the weather can block parts of the road for a couple of days. That means all your plans, your itinerary is out the window if you don't have flexibility or aren't ready to adapt to those things. Also keep in mind, in the middle of winter, we're not there yet, but in the middle of winter, we only have about 4.5 hours of proper daylight. So if you want to see any sights, you really don't have a lot of time or a big window in the day to do so. Summer is the opposite, of course, when there's practically 24-hour sunlight. So that's a much better time to see and visit the countryside and the kind of natural wonders of Iceland, even though, of course, everything has its own, or has their own unique characteristics and charms in wintertime. So it's a different place, definitely. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is how the change in season affects the kind of Icelandic psyche. I think we have midwinter blues throughout all of the parts of the world that see big seasonal changes, but that effect is more heavily pronounced up here, where we have, like I mentioned earlier, a very small window of daylight in wintertime. This can lead to depression and again deep winter blues, but for many of us, we've already developed a coping mechanism, which is that we can change our focus. We become more introverted, more creative. We kind of change our pace. Everything slows down, become more introspective, and we start moving indoors in wintertime. So we just do different things. Candlelight, various lights, of course. We're big on decorating with lights. And again, more introspective, cozy, familiar and close things to do in wintertime, while summer is kind of more reserved for extroverted, extravagant and outgoing activities. I think this is, again, your mileage varies a lot, but I think this can be stated is kind of a general characteristic of the Icelandic people. And maybe other people in similar conditions, I don't know. Now Laugavegur officially stretches about a kilometer further east up here, but where I'm standing right now at Hlemmur, where the food court is pretty much where the official, or at least cultural part of commercial Laugavegur starts, heading towards downtown. So this is where we'll start our walk back towards Lagata and Tjörnin, the pond. Hlemmur, the food hall, used to be a bus terminal, used to be very trashy. So this used to be a very trashy eastern part of downtown. Still has that kind of charm to it to some degree, but it is slowly gentrifying. And I think the first big step was the food court, and now the whole area is under construction and they're building a square around here. Some of the buildings though still contain that old charm. A lot of tourists, understandably, when they talk about grocery prices in Iceland, they basically have them from these stores, which you'll find in the touristy parts of downtown. Yes, groceries are expensive here, cost of living is high, but it's not that expensive. Not as expensive as those places if you know how to shop a little bit more locally. So shop at Bonus, Krónan, Netto, something else. These 10-11 stores are ridiculously overpriced. So this then, over the street of Snorrabraut, down from Hlemmur, is where we move into the more kind of shopping part of Laugavegur. What we can see here, well, it's not a pedestrian street here yet, but it will be slightly further down. What we can see here is kind of the old architecture, which I don't think it's brutalist per se, but is, well, in my perspective, anything but pretty, anything but beautiful. It's slowly kind of receding to more, or giving way to more modern architecture, in houses being gradually replaced along this part of downtown. And I, for one, think that's a good change, because that old, cold, grey style, it didn't do much for me. The strangest thing just happened. I met a couple of people and they were speaking Icelandic. That's very odd downtown on a Sunday afternoon in October. This is now Eriksson Brasserie, probably, and I'd expect a hotel as well. And that's the major change that I see when I go downtown. This used to be a bank and was throughout all of my childhood, but everything is now changing to restaurants or hotels. I guess that's the inevitable, inevitable evolution or inevitable change when you're going through a tourism boom like Iceland has in the past decades. This is a recent addition to the local cafe flora, can I call it that? Starbucks recently opened a place on Laugavegur, the only location in Iceland yet, and hopefully will remain that way. I mean, I have nothing against the coffee itself, but we already have our local chains of coffee places, which I like a lot more than Starbucks, and I really appreciate the kind of more genuine feeling of having a local chain rather than just the world being a copy-paste of, or each city in the world being just a copy-paste of any other city. So I wish they went away, to be honest. Almost stumbled there. This I think I mentioned somewhere else, probably numerous times as well, on numerous occasions. Reykjavik and Iceland in general is, well, considers itself a very socially progressive country and city. So expect diversity and expect, well, a lot of tolerance for diversity. That's actually a characteristic that we are very proud of as Icelanders in general. So here on the intersection of Frakkastígur is where Laugavegur turns, or the down part, or the downtown part, the western part of Laugavegur turns into a mainly pedestrian street. There is a taxi in front of me on the pedestrian part. I guess taxis are allowed to make drop-offs. One of the more famous traditional bakeries in Iceland, always worth a visit as well. Feels like this is turning into a recommendation of places to visit in Laugavegur. Guess that's okay. I am a local after all. But then again, I don't go downtown that much, so for me coming here, walking down Laugavegur, it's constantly changing, constantly something new. New places have popped up, new buildings have been, or old buildings have been torn down and new ones built to gentrify the downtown area. So yeah, it's an exploration journey for me as well. Kormákur og Skjöldur, one of my favorite clothing stores downtown. I was bashing on Starbucks earlier, so this is tea and coffee, which is the Icelandic chain of cafes. So I much rather recommend that people use the opportunity and stop by there. You can have your Starbucks anywhere else in the world. Here in the lower section of Laugavegur is a bookstore called Hús Mál og Menningar, the House of Language and Culture. They have something unique going on. I think every night they have like a house band playing. It turns into a pub cafe. Pretty much it's a pub and cafe as well. And I think they have this house band playing like a whole sing-along big thing. Very popular with visitors and I think locals alike. Definitely recommend if you have no idea what to do on a weekday evening perhaps. Check at least out if they don't have that stuff going on. As we reach the bottom of Laugavegur and get to the intersection with Skólavörðustígur, the Rainbow Road, we come to the Christmas shop. So if you're in dire need of with the Christmas dosage, you can always pop by here. So 365 days a year, there is a Christmas or festive spirit in this place. All right, but I think this pretty much concludes our little autumn walk around downtown Reykjavik. We're about to get back down to the intersection. I'll head back through downtown and try to figure out where I parked my car. I hope you enjoyed. If you have questions, comments, something, again, use the comments below and pop them in. I'll try my best to get back to you. Thanks for coming along on a autumn stroll of downtown Reykjavik. See you in the next video.